Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. I really appreciate you all joining, and I'm very excited to have an exciting agenda for you all today. For those of you who are not so familiar with Devo, we recently acquired the SOAR Innovator Logic Hub. And in this session, we're really excited to talk about the combined solution and how this fits into our vision for the autonomous SOC. And now, don't worry if you're not familiar with what the autonomous SOC is. We'll explain that concept for you today as well. Who do we have on the line? I'm joined by Kumar, Vice President of SOAR Strategy and Integration, and previously the co-founder of Logic Hub. Also, Stephen Morrow here, who's our Senior Director of Global Solution Engineering, and Monty Yao, who's our Director of Solution Engineering. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over now to Stephen Morrow to kick us off.
All right, thanks, Chris. So let's start by just introducing Devo. We know some of you may not be familiar, so we want to make sure we handle Devo and that we talk to you about that. So Devo is 10 times the data, 10 times the speed at half the cost. And what that basically means is we are built for scale. We're built for speed. It's core to our platform. It's core to our vision, right? Also, we're able to deliver that at a price point that just other competitors simply can't. And all of that leads into this vision of the autonomous SOC. And it's really the reason that we went ahead and moved forward with the Logic Hub purchase. It's part of the guiding principle to allow you to take the data, which is the foundation of doing things right. You have to have good data to do it, to allow us to act upon the data, which you're gonna see as we go through. We also have a vast portfolio of partners and customers and awards that you're welcome to look through, and of course reach out, and we'd love to discuss and engage with you. All right, so let's talk about the challenges customers face. So first is this concept of the log explosion. There are so many logs and so many data points being created that it's become difficult to keep them all, and not only to keep them all, but to then further analyze them, automate off them, or do anything really productive with them, right? Devo being built for speed and scale, and the way that our analytics work allows you to start to address a lot of the pain points that come from that log explosion. So the first one is your attack surface expanding. The more these logs occur, the larger the attack surface becomes, the harder it is to look across the enterprise and understand exactly what's occurring. It also leads to talent shortages. The more data you have, the more you have to look through, and the less automation you can provide, the more talent you ultimately need. And that's where the autonomous SOC really starts to shine, as it relieves a lot of that talent shortage. Regulations continue to balloon. There's no escaping this explosion. It's going to happen. It affects everybody. You have to do it. And of course, there's budget pressures and the value question of that data, especially if you can't act on the data. To get value out of data, you have to act on it. And so that's what we're leading to with this autonomous SOC. So what is the autonomous SOC? So at the core of it, from a Devo perspective, there are three basic elements: analytics, data, and community. The data is by far the foundation. Without data, nothing else can work. But once you have that data, you have the analytic piece, and the power of Devo with all of our AI and ML and the ability to query and search and do all these things, which you'll see in a demo as we go through here, as well as our community. The community allows you to get access to what others are doing. It allows you to get out-of-the-box content. It's a hugely powerful tool. And as we move into the Logic Hub portion of this, as you go through and see, you'll see that a lot of the same concepts carry through. We wrap all that in AI and automation. Without these principles, you cannot get to the autonomous SOC. You cannot reduce the number of analysts you have in play. You have to have AI and automation to do it, because there's activities on top of it like threat detection, threat hunting, threat investigations, incident response that these analysts are doing. And that AI and automation is the path to the future, to reducing a lot of those monotonous activities that tie up the analyst time and just kind of lead to lack of productivity. So how do we make it a reality? Well, in the Devo platform, we start with collecting the data. I've said a few times, and I'll say it again, it's the foundation. It's what we have to start. We ingest everything. Send us all the data you have, and we'll talk a little bit about how that works as we go through. And then you get to kind of pick, and we make that very easy to do. As far as analyzing and visualizing, you're going to notice that Devo has massive ease of use. We've allowed you to build queries very simply, and we're going to go through and talk about how that works. And those queries extend throughout the entire platform to cover visualizations, analytics, all of that. And then we package on top of it the power of our exchange, which brings, Devo 360, the service ops, the applications, all the things that empower you to look at different lenses of that data, different aspects of the data, to arrive at the conclusions that you need to reach to take action. And then finally, the autonomous SOC, which is really what we're here to really talk about today, which is how do you now take all that wonderful data, all of those analytics, and then wrap that around with the concepts of, SOAR and autonomous hunt and risk-based alerting and so forth. So it's just how we power all of that. So let's talk about why Devo is uniquely suited to do this. Lots of SIEMs have combined with SOAR, and we've seen in the market that this is a concept that the market has been striving for a long time. And it's of the belief that one of the challenges in the market, one of the reasons that this has largely failed in the past, was because a lot of these platforms aren't built for scale, right? The data is coming into the platform, but if you can't get at it fast enough, then AI can't react to it. AI is always going to act much quicker than a human. So it has to, if you use this example on the left, it actually has to reach up to that funnel and go through these bottlenecks to ultimately get the value out of that data. And that causes long queue times and such in the SOAR. So effectively, it can't work autonomously. With Devo, we remove all of those bottlenecks. Data comes in fast. We don't index the data on ingestion, so the data shows up often within milliseconds, sometimes faster. It's pretty much line latency almost when the data gets in, and then once it's in, you can query that immediately. And it's fast queries, even over large data sets running into the petabytes. You can query that incredibly quickly. So as you can imagine, this autonomous SOC is reaching into that data all the time and asking questions, and it's asking them faster than a human can. Since we're not legacy, since we weren't built for humans, we were built to enable AI and ML, we allow it to access that data at full speed and in an unlimited fashion, which allows you to unlock all of the power of that data and surround it with that automation. It ends up leading to a few things. First off, your analyst gets much more effective because they have the capability to use all that data however they need to arrive there. And some of the work that's been monotonous has been removed for them, right? They're no longer are they searching for the same case over and over to try to find the little nugget that they need and then saying, this was a rabbit hole that I was better off not going down. It's solving a lot of those problems. It's giving you better detections, right? Especially since you can get all the data ingested. You don't have to worry about the scale. You don't have to worry about it falling over. And then ultimately, it always leads to more ROI to the business, right? It's going to give you a better return on your investment. It's going to protect the business better. So it's certainly something that I think you'll find gives us a unique position. So what's some of our core differentiators of the Devo platform as a whole? So first off, we unify all that data. And you'll see in the demonstration that we bring it together in unique ways, right? We have table structures that allow you to bring things like firewalls all into one place. And I think as you go through and see that, you'll find that you can query it quickly and act upon it in a way that you just can't do with other platforms. All of our data is hot. We do not have a cold concept. When the data comes into Devo, it comes in hot. And we still do that at a lower cost, right? So it's something where you don't have to struggle with, hey, I need to go back in time and I need to pivot on the data because of the lack of the indexes and because of the always hot. You're going to get to do that. Our queries are incredibly fast. We can handle massive scale. Everything's raw, right? We don't change the data you send us. It's preserved exactly as you sent it, which actually enables a lot of capability in the autonomous SOC because it's dealing with the data as if it got it directly. So it's giving you the capability to get that pool and to get that organization at that speed and bring all of that log explosion together while still accessing it in a seamless way. We're cloud native. You don't have to go and install a bunch of stuff in your environment to use us. You can use us right in the cloud, right out of the gate. It gives us that power of scale so that we can deliver back that speed. We are multi-tenant. So even when you're using something like Logic Hub, you're going to be able to reach into those individual tenants the same way you would any other tenant, which means that you can overcome geographical barriers. You can overcome organizational barriers. All those options are there for you. So how do we seamlessly integrate into your SOC? First, we take the data in on the left side. And as you can see, we have different ways that you can send in the data. The first is on-premise. So we do have a way to easily send in data through our relay, which allows you to just ingest the data from your local data center or what have you, and bring that in. We have our endpoint agent. There's no additional cost for the endpoint agent. It's something we provide, but we also allow you to work with any endpoint agent. If you already have an agent installed, you can continue using it. So we've made that easy to get that data in. And finally, we work with the cloud and how we integrate to get all those data sources. That's all API driven. But as we move to these sources on the left, that's where the second part of these integrations start to take place. That's where the power of source starts to get unlocked. So at this time, I'd like to hand it over to Kumar here, who's going to walk you through a little bit of the logic of value.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. So one of the, Steve talked about how data is the foundation of all the analytics, detection, and if you can't detect something, you can't respond to it. But one of the things we have seen, especially in the last 15 plus years, is there is a lot of data that you're collecting, but you also need to take actions, right? So you get an alert, you look at it, you want to enrich, you want to gather additional context, and you might want to reach out to services that don't want, like calling those API calls can be expensive. So you don't want to be doing that millions of times a day. You want to do that on when you need it. And those are the kind of API calls that SOAR platform allows you to integrate with. And literally we support at this point 220 plus different security products, literally thousands of actions that you can automatically take with a point and click UI. You can invoke any action on these products. Ultimately, our goal is that instead of security analysts and incident responders like opening 5 products in 5 different tabs and working through that and copy pasting, you want to bring all of that information on a single screen so that people are not spending minutes just copy pasting data between different systems. And that's where the ability to support every single tool in your security stack is very important. And one of the unique things that we bring to the table is we actually offer a guaranteed delivery of any new integration. As long as it's a commercial security product, we'll integrate it free of charge within 3 weeks. And that is something that most of the speed of delivery of integrations is something that most SOAR platforms cannot deliver. And that is really made possible by a very flexible framework that we have. So let me talk a little bit more about some of the other core capabilities that SOAR platform has. But the main goal for us, the SOAR platform, the main goal for us is to make sure that the analyst can do so much more with the time they have. And it reminds me of one of the customers probably 4 years ago at this point. When we showed up there, they were getting about 5,000 alerts every day. They had a team of 50 analysts, 20 of them level 1, more level 2s, level 3s, threat hunters, all of that. And they had an SLO of 20 minutes to respond to every single alert. But 70% of the time, they're missing it. They're actually pretty good about documenting the playbooks, but by the time an analyst goes through 13 steps in a playbook, it's over 20 minutes. So they were actually, instead of hitting the SLO target 99% of the time, they were missing it 70% of the time. So one thing that we did was we took the playbooks that they already had documented and say, why make human analysts go through and manually go through every single step 30 times, sometimes 50 or 100 times a day? Let's automate it. And once you automate it, the analyst, by the time they log in, they're getting the full context behind the alert. All the additional information that they were logging in 5 or 7 different systems to pull in, that's on a single page. And they can quickly review it instead of doing that work to collect and analyze and investigate and triage the data. They are now simply reviewing the work that has been done by the bot, the automation. And once they're convinced that, okay, we have made the right conclusion, we know what the right action can be taken, the actions itself can also be automated. And when people start with a SOAR platform, initially they are a little bit trepid about automatically taking actions. One of the comments I hear, what if we turn the CEO's laptop off? So we have what we call a one-click automation. So you look at the case, look at the incident, you agree with the analysis, you agree that the right call here is to block this on the firewall or add this particular hash to CrowdStrike and so on, or any number of actions, or send a notification email to this particular email alias. Those are all the things that can be done with a click of a button. So what used to take 20 minutes per alert now takes less than 2 minutes. And furthermore, many times what we find that 95% of the alerts are actually false positives. They don't really require an action, but they do require additional triage and additional investigation to do that. And that all can be fully automated. It's a tremendous amount of ROI that people get from automation. In fact, what we find is typically in 3 to 4 months, the tool almost pays for itself, and rest of the year people are saving on the investment. So what makes this possible? So one of the biggest things besides integrations, of course, is the ability to take any playbook that you have documented, or sometimes it might be just tribal knowledge, but someone can walk you through in 10-15 minutes. You take any playbook, and in a very easy to use no code way, you can fully automate the playbook from beginning to end. Now, as I alluded on the previous slide, if you can't make accurate decisions, you are relying again on the analyst to have to go through hundreds, sometimes literally hundreds of alerts within an hour and decide which one is a real incident, which one is not. And only then you can take action. So even though you might get a little bit of benefit by enrichment and some of the steps, unless and until you can actually automate the decision making, you cannot get 10x, 50x speed ups that we see at our customers. And one of the biggest things that we heard, and we continue to hear, when people try this thing out for the first time, or the first week, or the first month, one common question comes up: how do we know that the automation is doing the right thing? And we have answered that question at many enterprises. And typically, what we find is the automation is off by 1 or 2%, and that's because some tribal knowledge is not yet baked into the playbook, and that's another opportunity to improve the playbook. But when we look at what people do, we find that they make somewhere between 14 to 16% error rate at different enterprises. Why? Because if a playbook is 13 steps, many times people will do the 4 steps, and they are trying to meet the deadlines, the SLOs, and they will skip the rest of the step and end up making the wrong decisions. Case management is another very powerful capability that SOAR brings to the table. And really the idea is we encourage people, and we have transitioned many of the enterprise security operation teams to, rather than going and looking at thousands of alerts a single day, or maybe you're a smaller team, you're only looking at 50 alerts in a single day, you can actually eliminate 95% of that automatically. So instead of looking at 1,000 alerts a single day, you only have to look at 50 real incidents. And on each of those incidents, a lot of the contextual data, a lot of the actions that you want to do becomes available on one page in a single click. And obviously, none of this would be possible unless and until you're able to tie every single tool in the security tool stack, security tech stack. So integrations are the foundation, one of the foundational pieces of SOAR technology. And really, this leads me back to the vision of Autonomous SOC. You can never take people out of the picture. I don't believe, at least not in the next 10 years, I can safely say that. But what we can do is every security team can use the security talent that they already have more effectively, more efficiently, on higher quality things, as opposed to, I have literally talked to analysts, their full job is to go through 50, 60, sometimes even hundreds of alerts in a single day. and they're not able to do justice to most of those alerts. They're quickly trying to analyze things in 5, 10, 20 minutes. Whereas if you can eliminate as much as 90%, 95% of the alerts, those analysts can do much better analysis on the real incidents. Those analysts can actually go in and do threat hunting. We have found many security teams have completely eliminated the job that many of the analysts would have to spend looking at alerts. And those level 1 analysts are going deeper into incidents, and some of the level 2 and level 3 analysts, now that they have more time, are actually able to do threat hunting. And that is a transition that we have seen. It takes a little bit of time to organizationally and from a technology perspective get there. It could take 3 months, 6 months, even up to 12 months sometimes. But it's a really wonderful way to move in that direction, where more and more work is being done by bots, by automation, and we are using people's time much more efficiently. So let me pause there and let's actually see the product in action. Let's take a look at a live demo.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and get started. So what you're looking at right now is Devo. We're in the data search mode right now. So Devo includes 400 days hot data right out of the gate. Our sweet spot is large amounts of data and being able to make some sense of that data very easily, very quickly. And I think as we go through this story, you'll start to see how Devo actually can take that data and push it into Logic Hub, which is going to enable us to take action on the data, because ultimately that's the desire, and we want to do that in a very easy, fast way, right? So let's just go ahead and start here. As you can see, we've got several tables we can call on. We have technology, brand, type, subtype. This is how we break down the data on ingestion. It makes it very easy to find something. So in this case, I'm going to be interested in firewall data. So I'm actually going to click here to firewall all, and then you'll see here this traffic table. So what's interesting about this table in particular, before I click onto it, is it's actually bringing together multiple firewall technologies that are disparate into one common model so that you can quickly work with them. Devo does this all through the application so that you can quickly bring tables together and deal with them en masse. So let's go ahead and do that. And with a simple click, I'm going to go in and see all that data come up. So at this point, I've got all the data here. I can go ahead and start to work with this, do whatever I may need to do. But in this case, we want to start to build the detection. We want to start to look through it. Now, one thing that's important with Devo, and you're going to see it as we go through, is you don't necessarily have to know our underlying language. You're able to go ahead and work with this right out of the box. And I think you'll see the same concepts come through in Logic Hub as we get to that part of the demonstration, which Monty will be handling here. So let's go ahead and start with this firewall traffic table. Let's go ahead and first take out the source IP. I want to see if that's public or not. So Devo makes it very easy to do that with very little necessarily knowledge. As you can see, we have several operators up here we can choose from. In this case, I'm interested in filtering because I want to find out, is this a private IP or not? And I can do that real easy without writing any code or understanding any language. I just have to look for private and then just simply click filter, right? And as you can see, it actually wrote the query up here for me, right? So I didn't have to learn anything. I didn't have to do anything other than basically kind of an Excel-like operation where I just highlight a column and work with it. And I'm going to do the same thing over here for destination IP, right? Because I don't necessarily want to know if that one's private, but I do want to know if that one's public because I am concerned about the public IP, right? That's the ones I want to look at. So once again, as you can see, it quickly modified the query. I didn't have to do anything particularly difficult there to do that. Now we need to start grouping the data and making sense of the data, right? Because ultimately we want to know how frequently this is occurring. So all I did there was click group. And as you can see, I have multiple options. In this case, I'm going to do time-based. We're going to do 1 hour. It's very flexible. You can do that. And if you did want to, one thing that I love about Devo is, although we make it very easy to learn, since you can do everything with a click, if someone wants to go up here and they do know the query language, write it. There's nothing stopping you. We actually allow the advanced user and the less advanced user to do the operation however they want. And you'll find as you go through our platform that everywhere, everything's a query for us. So whether it's a dashboard, whatever it is, it's a query. That carries through into Logic Hub as well. Everything, the same queries carry through right out of the gate and just give you all that power, unlocked right away. So we've got the event date, we've got the destination IP here. And now what we want to go ahead and do, now that we've grouped this, is let's go ahead and start to enrich this data, right? We want to go ahead and know, what threats are out there. So I'm going to use this create column, and I'm just going to call this known threat. And then once I call it that, we're just going to go ahead and do the enhancement, right? So give me one moment here. Sorry. There we go. And we're going to go to categories right there, search CTI categories. And we're going to go ahead and enrich that. We do need to add the argument, which will go ahead and make destination IP. And I don't have to do that manually, but I could have clicked on the column, but I didn't. So in this case, I'll do it that way. And as you can see, we've got known threats, but we do have a lot of nulls in there. That's not overly helpful, right? We don't want to know the nulls. So you know what? I'm going to filter that down real fast. And I'm just going to say that I just want to see slingshot 2. I could have also done not null. There's lots of different ways to do this, but in this case, that's how I'm going to do it. So we've already got some known threats here. We've got our destination IP. We've got our event dates, right? Super helpful, but we also need to start to aggregate the count. So in this case, let's go ahead and do another group. Let's go ahead and make it an aggregate. And I want to get a simple count. So I'm just going to do an aggregation there. And now you can see I've already got the count. So now I know how many times is happening on this IP. I've clearly got something going on with this slingshot APT. I've got it happening in multiple places. Now that I've started to find that, I'm starting to get to the point of having a detection, right? One of the things that's really cool is we allow you to build very complex queries also with the same UI. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to aggregate. I'm actually going to choose to do a hyperlog count, right, with a count estimation, which will give me a lot of power here. And I'm going to use it for the source. I'm going to use source IP, right, to do this. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and round, right? And as you can see, I didn't have to necessarily do anything to do that. It was able to do all that for me, and the query has been written, and all of this data is now present. I've now got the counts, I've got the source IP, I've got the known threat, the destination IP, the event date. I can take this data, I can use it anywhere in Devo, and we absolutely would love to have a conversation about how you can use this in your dashboards. It's not in the scope of this webinar, but you can use this in your dashboard, you can use this in other parts of automation. You can use this all throughout the entire Devo platform. But in this case, we're going to carry it forward to Logic Hub, right? So now that I've got this entire detection done and I've got it built, if I want to make an alert on this, all I have to do is click that little alert icon, and then right here I can go through, name the alert, click create, set the priority, and I have an alert. So if you can imagine at this point, I've very quickly, very easily built a detection. The detection's ready to go. I've done it over 400 days of hot data, large amounts of data, large data sets. I've quickly reduced it. And so now it's time to make this thing take action, right? So once this alert fires, it then goes over to Logic Hub to handle it. So Monty, if you could, I'd love for you to start walking us through the Logic Hub part.
In Logic Hub, I'm not going to do it manually anymore. I'm going to create a playbook to have the machine automatically doing this work for me. So just very similar to what I have done in the Devo interface. I have a step to gather those source to destination IPs in here, and in this case, the destination IPs, and then it tells me how many clients connecting to it. This is a simple Devo query. By the way, I will show you how to build a playbook like this shortly. The next step is obviously just like I did in the Devo user interface. I want to be able to aggregate. So there are really 5 unique IP addresses I need to go block. I can have the playbook automatically go find the source IPs by do a simple hunt within the Devo data lake. This is in Logic Hub is called a module, right? A module is encapsulating some additional automated routines or tasks, and I can easily go look into the details of that too. Right? So what this is looking at the source IPs and do a search against the Devo platform. So each this is a query that you can configure to dynamically search for all the sources that touching or reaching that destination IPs. But instead of doing this manually, I have machines now doing that automatically. And then the other benefit of this is there are 5 different destination IPs. So essentially, these are 5 concurrent searches against the Devo platform. Devo being the scalable cloud-based platform, you can hit a 5, you can hit 50, 500, 5,000 it's not going to be a problem. Versus some of the other SIMs that I have experienced with, you have to throttle it. You cannot do more than 2 or whatever you are allowed to do. Otherwise, you're slowing down the SIM for others. So that's a little bit of side note that we're not need to go into more details of. So query Devo finding the source IPs. I want to be able to extract these source IP addresses. Right. So instead of 5, there's actually 25 unique sources connecting to the Devo IPs or destination IPs. So what we want to do next is just extract the source IP address and send another command. So it could be quarantine against any endpoints that we have integrations for. So this is simply issuing a module call to a quarantine. Likewise, for the source, for the destination IPs, what we want to do here is to extract the destination IP address. So there are 5 of them, and then be able to call another module to say blocking those IPs. And at the end, we want to set this to run automatically. So we set this to output from both ends. So a playbook completes itself when you have a beginning to an end. And then what you do next is you configure the machine to run automatically. And this will execute on its own automatically, right? So I just had a couple runs in the past. And each one of them processed about 30 IPs, a combination of source and destination. It took about 24 seconds, right? So if you do the math, going from 30 minutes to 3 minutes to 30 seconds, that's 2 magnitude of reduction in time. Now, you do have to invest some time to create this playbook. All right, so let me just quickly show you how to do that. To create a playbook, you can start from new playbook. Start from a blank one. Give this a name. Let's just call this demo for now. And then you can set up a time range for your test data. So for me, let's just keep it simple. Let's do last 1 hour. And then I'm going to connect to a SIM. There are many different SIMs we support. Devo is right on the top. So here, there's an event type. Let's go Devo indicator hunter, run a query. So this essentially is running a query against Devo with that time frame. And as part of the playbook creation, you can constantly provide feedbacks. In here, I'm just going to ignore it. Just like the previous playbook, what I'm going to do is I'm going to group by distinct IPs. I'm going to click this distinct IPs. I'm doing a simple group by. I want to gather how many unique sources. So instead of doing count, I'm going to do a sum of the count. So that's going to give me a total count. And I can add in other sources, other fields like known threats. This maybe I just want to get the first one. And then distinct sources. Let's do the max. So, and then the other aggregated functions that can be performed. Hit go. The system will automatically does the compute. And then the next step is I want to be able to hunt the destination IPs from the Devo platform. So I search for Devo hunt. And this is a module, right? So a module is encapsulated multiple script steps down below it. I'm going to simply use this connection to configure the module with. And this is the query against Devo, the pre-configured query. And then here it tells me there's 3 unique sources hitting it, hitting the destinations. So now I need to expand that. So here there are simple functions called split array. And I'm going to split the array, choose from the result, and I'm going to rename that to Devo result. Run that. It's a very simple data operations. Now I have a Devo result, and then now I have 4 records instead of just 1. And the next step is I'm going to extract the source IPs. I can highlight this and hit extract. And then if you have multiple ones you want to extract, you can do this in one shot here. Choose the others and take an action. And then hit run. Along the way, by the way, you can always configure the name of the step and then put in some descriptions. So that way, later on, if you want to come back to this playbook, you can actually follow what you did. So once I have source IP address, I'm simply going to call another module, or I'm going to call something to quarantine. And I have a module configured to quarantine. It could be generic, but there are other quarantines actions available from other tools. So here I'm just choose the Devo quarantine, generic Devo quarantine. And then this completes the source quarantines. So I'm going to set this, I'm going to run, if I'm going to run from beginning to end. Now let's go back to the other branch. We want to get the distinct destination IPs, and we're going to block those IP addresses. So simply extract the distinction IPs, and you can use recommendations here as well. There's if you type in a keyword after a recommended step, they will automatically bubble up to the top. So here we'll have a couple blocks, blocking IPs, blocking users. I'm just choosing block IP addresses. Hit next. Run, actions performed. And we also wanted this to be part of the complete end-to-end. So now you have it. This is essentially the same playbook that I have executed earlier. So just give you a quick comparison after and then before. The branches are swapped, but other than that, everything looks exactly the same thing. So once the playbook's complete, what you do next is you set up a schedule. How often do you want this to run? And then this can also be configured with a webhook. So if you don't want it to be scheduled to run, you can trigger it via a regular webhook. And that also is possible from the Devo end for alert delivery. You can set up an HTTP output with the JSON payload, and that can be sent to Logic Hub as part of the actions for alert triaging. So with that, I do want to conclude this demo. There are other features that we will take everybody through in the future webinars. Their case management abilities, their integration details, as well as advanced behavioral-based detections that are all possible within Logic Hub platform. Let's conclude the demo for now.
All right. Thank you very much, guys, for that awesome demo. We're now going to move into the question and answer section of the webinar. A reminder, if you do have any questions, please go ahead and put that into the question pane. We will be answering these live. And fortunately, we've received already a number of them, guys, so let's get through them. First question, does Devo support Sigma rules?
All right, I'll go ahead and take that one. Yes, we absolutely support Sigma rules. Matter of fact, I would encourage you to go to docs.devo.com, docs.devo.com. And if you just search for Sigma, you'll find it right there. We actually do support those right out of the box.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Next question, is there a list of supported log sources / data sources?
So I think I'll answer from the Devo side, then maybe Kumar, you can help answer some from the Logic Hub side. From the Devo side, absolutely. Once again, same site, docs.devo.com. But what's interesting about Devo is we can actually take in anything regardless of whether we have a pre-built parser. We always accept the data you send, and we actually have capabilities that you can actually auto parse that data and such. So any format, known or unknown, we can go ahead and take in. So you're not necessarily restricted by what we already have pre-parsed out for you. And I think that's something that if you reach out to sales at devo.com, we'd be happy to show you. From a Logic Hub perspective, is there things to add there, Kumar?
Absolutely. The Logic Hub help page is publicly available, right? So you can read the entire documentation, product documentation publicly, not gated. And one of the important sections in there is basically integrations. And if you look under the integrations, there are 220 plus products supported. And under every product, you can further see, what kind of API calls, what kind of data sources you have access to. Obviously, some are related to actions you're taking, but quite a few of them are query an Active Directory and get the list of organizations, get the list of users, match this criteria and so on, just to give you a quick example of the kind of details you'll find on that page.
And actually, Kumar, I think you can even bring in other SIMs, right? It doesn't have to be Devo for Logic Hub.
Absolutely, right? I mean, obviously, we talked about this earlier, is speed and scale is super important, right? But I think if you have, we work with customers who have Devo and a couple of other SIMs as well. And so you can actually talk to any kind of SIM, any kind of, endpoint system, any kind of service out there, anything that actually has an API, you can pull the data in from that.
But you get the advantage of speed and scale
Absolutely.
with us.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Great, thank you both. Next question, are the alerts assigned to MITRE tactics also semi-automatically by the engine over time, or is that manual per use case?
So let me start that one, and then let's see if you've got things to add there too as well, Kumar. So absolutely. We have multiple ways we address MITRE throughout Devo. The first is we have a robust security operations platform that actually indicates where they fall within MITRE, and all that's traced and tracked through the full investigation. Once again, something we can easily show you. Just feel free to reach out to us, and we'll set up a conversation. The second way we do it is we actually have a really nice MITRE attack advisor, which actually looks at all of your data sources and allows you to know where you're covered and where you're not. It's really good to give you a good full picture of where you may be the most vulnerable and what data you may not be able to act upon. And I would think that would apply very heavily to automation.
Absolutely.
Kumar?
And many of the what we end up doing is you can obviously build workflow playbooks, for example, phishing or vulnerability management and so on. But one of the things you can also do is you can build what we call detection playbooks, and where the main goal is to generate alerts, and those are automatically mapped to techniques and tactics of the MITRE attack framework, and then you can take a whole bunch of different alerts that might be tied to the same entity, same user, same IP address, same host, whatnot, and you can further aggregate it, and this all comes out of the box content that is available in Content Exchange.
Fantastic, thank you both. Use case specific questions. Is there a list of built-in use cases available somewhere?
So let's start with Devo again on that one. Absolutely. We have a customer community. That's one really great way that some of the use cases come in. But beyond that, we actually have our Devo Exchange, which has a whole host of instantly deployable use cases. They are assigned out by different ways that you can slice and dice to look and decide, I have this particular data and I want to bring it in. And it actually even gives you some innovative features where it'll look and say, hey, this would be a really nice detection for you to use. This would be something that you should consider using, but you don't have the data. And it can tie back to that same MITRE attack advisor I mentioned. So there's a lot of power there. from the Logic Hub side, Kumar?
Same thing in terms of content and use cases. There are a ton of one of the biggest things, challenges I would say that initial SOAR implementation run into is like, what are the 20-30 common use cases that other companies have gotten a lot of value out of? And so over the years we have done so many implementations, we have worked with so many customers to package all of that knowledge, all of those use cases as part of the content exchange. So you can hit the ground running with a lot of this out-of-box use cases.
Awesome. Next question. What is the average end-to-end deployment time of Devo from buying to up and running with at least built-in rules and some logs in your experience?
Yeah, that's such a tough question to answer because everyone has a different requirement, but I'm going to try to answer it as thoroughly as I can with the details that are there. So first off, we're a SaaS-based platform. That gives you a huge amount of speed because you can just instantly turn it on. Usually from what we've found, it's not getting the data sources in on our side because once again, I mentioned we can take anything whether we have a parser or not, and our cloud collector and our relay technologies make it very easy to get the data in. It's more usually what has to happen within the client to get that done. So for instance, if you need to get API keys, I mean, we need those. And we often find that's usually the piece that lags behind the most. As far as getting instant value out of it, I mean, that exchange we mentioned a moment ago kind of allows you to go ahead and get instant value. Since we know what data is coming in, we can provide those to you. And then as you go into the Logic Hub side, I would imagine it would allow you to kind of use it in the same way, that exchange.
Yes, absolutely. So
awesome.
Great, thank you both. Next question. Does Devo have UEBA capabilities? I believe Stephen has frozen, unfortunately. Take a moment here.
Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, I've got you, Kumar.
Okay, perfect. I think we might have some laptop issues with Stephen. He's probably jumping right back on. So could you go ahead and just kind of repeat the last question, Chris?
Sure. The question I asked was, does Devo have UEBA capabilities?
I think I'll take that on. We definitely have user entity, not just on the Devo side, but actually one of the lesser known capabilities that we bring in on the Logic Hub side is what I alluded earlier as detection playbooks. And many of the detection playbooks are more classic, rule-like, but people have done some really advanced detection playbooks that are much more behavioral analytics. And on Devo side, you can actually have entities, associations, so you can tie those things to an user endpoint and so on and so forth. Those are just different entities that you can talk about. Now, when it comes to UEBA, right, I have a ton of experience having worked in SIM and UEBA for last 15, 20 years. It's typically the problem is it's very noisy. It takes a lot of tuning, right, and take a lot of customization and adaptability. Otherwise, you're generating a lot of anomalous activity that are not really indicative of bad. And one of the advantages of the playbook approach to it is you can not only do user and entity behavior analytics, but you can actually customize it. So your false positive rates are really low. That is one of the things I've seen, people who try UEBA for the first time, it looks great in concept. And once they operationalize it, they suddenly get inundated with like thousands of alerts. And they spend days and weeks chasing them down to find very, very few real actionable. And then the obvious question goes, okay, how do I adapt the logic to make it much more high fidelity? And that is one of the key differentiators that that Logic Hub approach has, is you can customize and fine tune it much better.
All right, and sorry for that delay there. Can you hear me okay there, Chris?
You're great.
Fantastic. All right, so I want to add from the Devo side, my laptop shut off. From the Devo side, also UEBA, we have actually entity behavioral analytics as well. which we find is almost as complementary and powerful as a UEBA-based solution. What is the user versus what is an entity can sometimes be confusing. So I think that also adds some value. But a lot, mostly what we have there from Kumar covered a lot of that question.
Great, thank you. Next question here is on data collection and a bit about our architectural abilities to not index at ingestion. So if you could provide a little bit more in terms of how that works, do you have to tag events, and how that magic kind of comes to life during query?
Absolutely. So the way we do ingestion in Devo, so everything is stored raw. It's basically written to disk raw. What we do is we build a micro index on the data after it's ingested, and that happens in parallel and pretty much instantly. So for instance, one of the things that we can very easily show you is that if you send a piece of data, say through the API or something, I often like to send it with a timestamp to show this. You'll see that when you retrieve it, it's pretty much line latency that you get back. And that's because we're writing it raw to disk and making it immediately available. We have a unique data node structure, a meta-query node structure that we can explain on a future meeting that allows us to narrow that data set down very rapidly, as you saw in the demo, where I was just constantly narrowing down the data.
Thank you, Steve. And related to data handling, where is data stored? Is it all in the US, or do you have data stores in EMEA or Asia too?
Oh yeah, great point. Basically, anywhere that we can host in the cloud, we can host. And actually, with our multi-tenancy, it allows for a bunch of use cases. So for data residency requirements, things like that, we also have the capability to store some of your data in that residence of choice, while still allowing you to look at it holistically without necessarily having to store it at multiple locations.
Great, thank you. Another question here. Does Devo integrate with Picus security, apologies for the pronunciation, and Mandiant security validation platforms, or Simulate perhaps, or are these yet to come?
So all of our integrations are listed out there on docs.devo.com. I know some of those are in the list. But what's really interesting there is the fact that we do have a very robust API and we're able to integrate very quickly. So it depends on what you mean by integrate sometimes. If you're just talking about taking data in, that's always doable for anything. But when you're talking about other types of integrations, we often see those through the API. So I would say look at the docs.devo.com list to see how we do each one of those so you can fully understand the scope of each one.
Thank you. Another question. Does Devo have quick reaction capabilities in case of an active breach? I mean, not during prevention, but with an ongoing breach. I'm thinking of deploying Devo while an ongoing attack is in progress.
Chris, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that question. We're having trouble hearing you properly. Actually,
apologies.
Chris, can you hear me clearly?
Yep, I've got you, Kumar.
Okay, perfect. So in terms of quick reaction capabilities, so the question is, does Devo have quick reaction capabilities in terms of active breach? And one thing I would add to that is part of the automation and the response part, right, is to actually being able to react very, very quickly, right? And many times you do the investigation, and when you want to take the actions, you are limited to manual responses and so on. But for many security teams, if they know that a certain kind of action would be very useful, that could be pre-automated, it's literally one click, and you can take action against hundreds of endpoints if you wanted. Steve, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think I do. I mean, one of the things that I think I'm hearing in the question is the idea of trying to put Devo into play at real time while a breach is going on. I mean, you could certainly stand up Devo, but the thing is you haven't captured any data, and the data is foundational to it. So, data has to be captured in real time. It has to be stored somewhere, and then it has to be accessible, right? So it's not something that you would necessarily deploy in real time. It's something that you would deploy in advance, have all the data fed into, and have all the detections and use cases available.
Great, thank you. A couple more questions here, and we can wrap up. Are there agents for the endpoints? And do you have an agent to get on-prem type syslog sources, database logs, file-based logs, and how is that done for those types of log sources?
Absolutely. So first off, we do have an endpoint agent. We have our own that we can provide for you. That's not a problem. But we're also very friendly to other agents. So if you have other agents out there you want to use that are already installed, we can get them. Syslog is never a problem. We can take that in. We also have our Devo relay. So it basically sits inside of your data center, receives your logs, and forwards them onto Devo. So you only have to have one output point. It also allows you to do some transformation on that data if need be. Before you take it into Devo. So it makes it very easy to get that out. And typically we see customers deploying those on a per site sort of basis.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. And last question that we have here, in terms of creating additional integrations, is there an SDK or something similar to make that possible?
Absolutely. So we have our Devo application SDK already out there. You can find it in our docs. We try to be very open and very supportive of integrations. And actually, it's worth noting that with the acquisition of Logic Hub, our integrations, we were able to integrate very, very quickly. I mean, within 2 days, we had everything integrated and ready to go. So we're very flexible in that regard.
Great. Well, thank you, Kumar. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Monty. Really appreciate the awesome webinar today. And as a reminder, if you do have additional follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Learn more at devo.com as well. And we look forward to seeing you in the next webinar sometime soon. Thanks again.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.